So,
Yeah. Yeah.
shit, is it working? Yeah,
I can't see you. There you go.
you can see me now.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. I know. So, if you want to do an interview about anything, talk about. I know your channel is about mental illness and disabilities and religion and stuff. So, I presume that you might have some, you know, unique opinions. I suppose. Well, like they won't be that unique, because like anything that anyone can think of, like it's obviously been thought of by somebody before, But anyway, I'm going to put this interview on my channel, and you can put it on your channel as well. And just I don't know, like just if you want to speak to just the audience that I have on, like I can speak to your audience as well, like and also to any random person that wanders into our channels, so they get to see us talking. And if there's anything you want to say, like I don't know, about society or um, healthcare or
Yeah, that's really one big thing that's on my heart. It's the way mental illness is treated still in the year 2019, and we still have people that are not getting the help that they need, and they're not treated fairly. What I see when I go get my meds and stuff, I see a lot of people beaten down and just unable to function, and it's disconcerting when you see everything else around you. You see people functioning, you see people, doing what they need to do, and but these people are forgotten people. I call them shadow people because nobody sees them, and that's a big thing with me. I mean, I think every time I go and pick up my meds, that's what I see. It's a local county-run health clinic for people that are poor.
Do you think that let's say mental health diagnoses somehow lead to poverty?
Both, and I think.
Well, it's true. Like, I mean, like if you're diagnosed, I'm diagnosed, so like just I know lots of people that is, and it seems to very, very negatively affect people's chances of getting a job, and affects them in their personal life as well. But yeah, the way it is treated, like it's treated like it's definitely stigmatic. It's definitely stigmatic. It's like I suppose an abstract classification of some kind of some defect or some deficiency or some defect or some vice, and it's basically it's applied to a person when they get diagnosed, and that defect is supposed to be present in them for the rest of their life, and well, until they get the diagnosis removed, which practically never happens. But like it's basically it's an abstract classification of people as deficient in some way and defective and flawed and possessing some kind of vice, and I just like it's a kind of moral system unto itself. The psychiatric industry, it's like a moral system where the epitome of good health, mental health, like good mental health, is equated with something virtuous, and bad mental health is equated as something that's stigmatized because it's bad for society. And is, like the stereotypical kind of way of looking at people with mental illness as if, they're inferior, or they're chaotic, or they're dangerous, or
right. Every time
stuff.
there's a mass shooting in the United States, that's the first thing that they start talking about was the shooter mentally ill, and it's always assumed that whoever's doing the shooting is mentally ill. And yeah, I mean, you are, in a sense, you would be if that's the way you decided to handle things, but that's not necessarily an organic mental illness that somebody may or may not have.
Well, yeah, it'd be kind of a social thing as well. Like, it would be like, if other people are necessary for you to manifest the symptoms of your mental illness, like, then there's obviously a social aspect to whatever you're diagnosed with. And I mean, like, how can a disease require a society or a civilization or social norms to be a certain way in order for the disease to manifest? Like, that, like, that's just one thing that I just spontaneously thought of there. But like, why would acting in a certain way that would be regarded as a psychiatric symptom even be something that shows people are deficient or ill in some way, if in order for it to evoke some kind of, consideration of it being abnormal, like, civilization and society have to possess certain norms. And I mean, like, I suppose, like, about 300 years ago, Europe was very, very Christian, and it was like, I suppose, if you questioned the traditional society that we had in Europe about 300 years ago, 200 years ago, when the first psychiatric institutions were made, I suppose that if you questioned religion, if you questioned basically kind of feudalism that was in Europe at the time, a feudalistic society, well, actually, I'm going off on a tangent now, right? But, like, so the thing is, like, the psychiatry it's present in, like, India and the Middle East and Africa and stuff, and in Western psychiatry, usually it's based on a manual. I think it's called the DSM-5. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
The Diagnostical Statistical Manual 5. It seems to me like the way that psychiatrists reach a consensus on what's actually a mental illness and something to be treated with medication is, they vote on things, but they vote on things in the context of what's going on in their culture at the time. Like, I mean, like, see, Ireland voted in a referendum on same-sex marriage and stuff, but I'd say about 20 years ago that stuff was illegal, and it was in America where there was lobbying of the mental health industry by that community in order to remove basically sodomy, as which used to be described as a mental illness in the DSM. They changed it so it's no longer a mental illness. But it just shows you that some of these diagnoses are culturally, they're representative of some kind of cultural norms in the society that they exist in, and psychiatry exists in the Middle East and exists in India and Africa, and I don't think those parts of the world would agree that it's not a mental illness. And you see this with the transgender ideology that's coming from America, basically coming from California, social justice warriors and stuff. I think the DSM, or the equivalent in Europe, I think it's the ISO 10. That's what the manual is called. But there used to be something called gender dysphoria, and basically that is being, I suppose it's being attacked by that community in order to destigmatize that community, because people can, the reason they don't want their practices described as a mental illness is because it's stigmatic, and they know it, and they know that people that advocate traditional marriage and traditional values would have basically the psychiatric services as a kind of symbolic weapon of the righteousness of their position. If the psychiatric services described homosexuality and transgender ideology as delusional, and I don't know where I'm going with this. See, like, my personal opinion is I voted no in that referendum. The government in my country is basically has made laws already to incorporate let's say more than two genders into law. And if you question that, like if a member of the general public questions this, it's actually going to be illegal, So like in theory, like the general public is totally oblivious to what the government is doing on this issue, but essentially, like in the future, we're going to have to learn all these different pronouns like Z and Zur and Z or whatever, like, and you'll get in trouble if you don't use them, especially with the hate speech laws. There was a protest outside the Irish government buildings a few days ago, and against the introduction of censorship restrictions on freedom of speech, and they're bringing in hate speech laws where there's a lot of things you can't say anymore. So in the next few weeks there'll be hate speech laws brought in to the country, and that's going to apply to everything. Everything people say, everything people write, everything said on the internet, in a phone call, even, like it's hate speech legislation. And it's making sure that the only legally acceptable narrative is going to be one that's basically repeating SJW ideology. Because I was saying this to other people as well, like I was saying the SJWs seem to be a kind of ideological think tank that...
Explain the SJW to me, please.
Social justice warrior, like...
okay, I get you. I missed it.
Antifa, and the LGBT community and all this, and all these college kids, like real progressively, super progressive college kids full of ideology, and they're basically, they have an enormous influence over the government, even though they're only a small number of people. So as far as the mental health stigma goes, like, yeah, there is stigma on mental health, like, but now, like, they're going to try and stigmatize people that represent traditional values. I think you made some Christian videos, but what's going to be pathologized in the future is actually people that advocate traditional values, and what's going to be described as the epitome of sanity is going to be people that are progressive in their ideology and stuff, and that's how I feel. So psychiatry it can be used as a social weapon. Even if there is some science behind it, like, it can still be used as a social weapon against undesirables, and a lot of it depends on the cultural context of what's desirable in society and what's undesirable at any particular time, and that's just my feelings on it. So what do you like? You thought you were saying that there's a lot of stigma against mental illness and stuff. Why do you think that is? Like,
I think part of it is it's another level to kind of undergird what you were talking about, and that's the pharmaceutical industry, and maybe that doesn't have so much to do with stigma, but that has a lot to do with the way people with mental illness. I lost my train of thought.
Well, can I just say about that point, like, you know, the way, like, it's very stigmatic to have to take medication for a thought or an emotion. Like, it's, I mean, like, I see, the way I look at it is like, I suppose if you think the wrong thing, or if you feel the wrong thing, or if somebody is delusional in some way, adding a kind of physical treatment to those beliefs, to physical treatment for a psychological state of mind, is making basically something that's a thought into something that's like, it's turning it into a physical deficiency. Like it's treating it as if it's real, as if it's physical, when in fact a lot of it is psychosocial. It's psychological, and in the context of society, or in the context of some situation, or in the context of experiences forming people's behavior to be a certain way. So I mean, like, to treat it as if it's something that's physically caused and physically curable, I think it's not looking in the right place. Like, I mean, like, even the fact that it's considered deficient or unacceptable is basically based on society's norms, and in different situations, like, what's considered unacceptable here would be considered acceptable in another part of the world, like, I don't know, in the jungle, or in you know, some in the Far East or something. Like, I don't know, like, I don't know how to talk about this really.
Oh, lost you.
Can you hear me now, dude?
Yeah.
So I don't know how to talk about this, but I do think that there's a lot of stigma, and you know, like,
comes primarily from society not being properly educated as to what mental health or mental, I don't like to say so much mental illness, because I don't think it's necessarily an illness, more mental health. And I catch myself all the time, I'll say mental illness when I mean mental health. And I think that you mentioned Christianity. I think there's totally huge stigma in the church that permeates society as well. You got somebody coming to church and, you know, they say they're bipolar. Well, we need to get the demon of bipolar out of them, so we're going to, you know, perform an exorcism, basically, try to get the demon of bipolar out of this person or whatever. And that way of thinking, I think, has permeated into society as well. Just like somebody decides to do something where the cops are involved, and what our city has done is train the police to recognize when there's a situation involving a mentally ill individual, and so they don't aggravate the individual if he's in a delusional state. They've taught him how to calm the situation and give what that person needs, rather than just instantly assume that they've done something wrong and throw them in the back of the car and put them in prison, and when there's no need for that. And because there's plenty of hospitals in town where people can go to get to get the help that they need. And it's not like, I mean, it's real help. It's not like the stigma of the old sanitariums where they would send people because they didn't know what to do with them back in the I guess 20s, 30s, and you know.
It's kind of something that I mean, it's kind of like it's related to basically the participation of individuals in a community, you know. I mean, like if people commit a crime and the police kind of they treat you different if they think that you were suffering from a mental illness when you done it. Like it doesn't happen in my country. The police are very brutal in my country, but like I've been to other countries and it does happen. Like if they think that you're mentally ill and then they think that you're not really responsible for what you have done. But there's a flip side to that where if people are participating in society and let's say they're not breaking the law and they're not particularly doing anything that's immoral or something like that, they might believe, like basically the community might believe that even their good contributions are not their own conscious decision to be good. Like it's like whatever good they do is accidental, and it's as if they do good or they participate in society or in community or in relationships in spite of their default state of being, which is inherently deficient and inherently inherently flawed or inherently incompetent in some way. Like I mean, like if you're not responsible for the evil, then you're not responsible for the good either, you know. So like how are you supposed to
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, like let's say somebody is trying to participate in a relationship or participate in society, and like let's say they're doing evil, but they like then the person that knows that they have a mental illness might say, you know, I forgive you because you don't really mean it because you're mentally ill and stuff, and you have issues and stuff. Like, but let's say like the opposite of that is like let's say you do good. I mean, you do something useful, like you don't really get 100% of the credit for doing something good because they expect you to not be fully responsible for your actions.
Yeah, you know? I get you.
You know, like I mean, like it happens. Like even in the workplace, like if people are employed and they're doing like, you can get a person that's diagnosed and they do more work than anybody else, or they do some particularly like particularly difficult jobs, and you know they work really hard and stuff, and then the boss doesn't really like. I mean, the boss would be impressed if a person that wasn't diagnosed went out of their way to be extra efficient or whatever, like worked especially hard. But if a person that's diagnosed does that, did they really get 100% of the credit? Like, I mean, like they're, you know, if they mess up, they're not responsible. If they do well, like I suppose if they work extra hard, that could be seen as in some way pathological in some ways, like, you know,
right.
why you know what I mean, why you working so hard, like why don't you take it easy and chill, bro, and stuff like that, you know, like why you working so hard. Like people might think that like you're obsessed with working really hard, like I mean, if like see like once you're diagnosed once, like if you have a diagnosis, and just speaking for myself now, for a lot of people that basically in the same situation as me, but when a person is diagnosed, what I usually see happening is like when they're diagnosed, like everything that they could possibly do is in the context of their diagnosis. From like their entire future is tainted by this original diagnosis. And even if people don't know exactly what the diagnosis is, it's like if they think that the person is mentally ill, like everything that they could possibly do in the future is somehow tainted. And it's as if whenever there's anything that a person does that involves some kind of, mystery or like something intriguing or something like that, like something that you have to, I don't know, if someone that observes it has to like consider, I suppose, consider the person in like more depth or something like that. Like, the mental illness is going to basically fill that information gap where it's going to be explained in the context of mental illness. I don't know. I mean, I think it's really something that the diagnosis is really something that prohibits people establishing a certain kind of depth of or trust or familiarity with people's deeper selves. Like if the person is diagnosed with mental illness, because there's always some kind of suspicion or some kind of suspicion or some kind of doubt or something like that. Like it's as if everything they do, the mental illness diagnosis it's always relevant in some way, and it's all like I find it in a lot of people where it's always in the back of their minds,
right,
that when they're interacting with someone that's diagnosed, like it's always in the back of their minds, like it's as if they're mentally walking on eggshells around you, or
right,
on, you know what I mean, or on the flip side, they could be openly abusive, like, or real dismissive, or misconstrue things or whatever and stuff like this. But it's an extra element. It's an extra element when you're considering a person. It's like this abstract medical moral system is an extra element in the equation. So like the people don't see individuals as who they are. They don't take an action on its own merits. They don't take an emotion for what it is. They don't take a thought for what it is. Like there's always some kind of middleman between the diagnosed person and the diagnosed emotions and the diagnosed will and the people that receive these things. It's kind of a middleman, and the middleman is like a filter of psychiatric ideology, which it taints basically how people are received. That's basically my experience of it. Like, some people might see through it, but not very many, So, I don't know. Like,
well, I know you've watched some of my videos, and I think usually on one or two of them, I've mentioned that I was a teacher for nearly 20 years, and I taught kids 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, which would be, I guess here would be usually like 8 to 12 years old kids, and they've already been given a diagnosis from the doctor, and when they haven't even fully developed, into a mature adult, they've given them these diagnoses, and are given medication and put in the corner of some school somewhere, and we're not going to deal with these kids. And those are the kids that I got. I got the kids that nobody else wanted to teach, and it always blew me away, because in one way it was one of the most incredibly difficult jobs I've ever had, but the most rewarding jobs, because if I gained their trust, if they knew that they could trust me, then I could get them to do anything academically. And I actually got called out from the school several times for my test scores, for my kids. They were always higher than the general population of the school. And the principal would always ask me, "What do you do different?" I said, "I don't do anything different. I just make sure the kids. I form a relationship with the kids, and they have what they need, and they know they can trust me. And once I have that trust, then I can teach them anything. The teaching part's the easy part, but and I always say that little did I know what I was being prepared for, because in 2017 I had been teaching, and in 2017 I just completely had a full-blown manic episode. I'm a pretty hairy dude, and I shaved off all my body hair, got naked, running up and down the street, screaming and doing all kinds of stuff. And I was put into a psychiatric ward, and I was there for like a month and a half, and I lost my job, and I haven't been able to return to work since. In our country, mental illness is considered a disability, and so I went through the process of getting disability from the government. So I've got an income coming in, but I'm not working. And my wife, she works, and we have two teenage kids. One's just now going to college this year, and the other one's about 2 years behind him. But now I forgot what my train this was going. I guess the whole stigma thing is I don't know, man. I'm sorry.
I mean, even if people do something that's not socially acceptable, like, I suppose I don't know why I'm going to talk about some aspect of Christianity in this, but I mean, I'm not a Christian, but like, in Christianity, the Savior is regarded as the Redeemer, like in Catholic theology anyway, like he's the Redeemer, and like it's about, like, it's the concept of redemption, where like people are forgiven if they're flawed in some way, if they're morally deficient in some way, like they're forgiven. But then there's like, when it comes to psychiatry and psychiatrically deficient, like that's not necessarily morally deficient, like, because like if you want to do something immoral, it requires like an actual conscious control over your actions, like not being under the influence of like some trauma, or not be under the influence of some situation or some dominant will or something. That's I mean, like if you were to be morally responsible for your actions, you would have to actually be in full possession of yourself, so that you're in command of yourself.
Right.
And you know what I mean? Like, I see this, like I see this on YouTube in the protests that happened a few days ago outside of the government buildings, where there was two crowds, and they both hate each other, protesting against each other, and very tribal, like. But I suppose, like, if people were under the influence of some kind of crowd sentiment, they're under the influence of a crowd sentiment, some kind of hive mind, or some kind of real sentimental mythos, or something that's dominating the crowd and dominating every person in the crowd, and it basically it destroys people's impartiality. Like, it destroys people's sense of proportion. And I mean, like, if you were to ask, like, I mean, if somebody asked me, if somebody was under the influence of some kind of ideological zeal, like, are they morally responsible for what they do when they're basically acting under the influence, like, in some kind of reaction to some kind of dominant will, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like, so...
I mean, that's why I left the church, because I got tired of being told how I should act, or how I should do this or do that by, you know, God's representative on earth. No way. You know, a lot of the stigma I've experienced, you know, was in the church, and I have a whole lot of other reasons why I left, but as it relates to mental illness, that was one thing, because they would treat me, you know, completely like I was a baby, like I couldn't take care of myself. And, you know, I don't cut my hair as much as I should probably, but I mean, I know how to dress, I know how to act properly, I know how to carry on a conversation with someone, but I happen to be mentally ill. I don't know how else to say it, and I take a lot of medication for it, and that keeps me from going off on my kids and going off on my wife, and keeps the peace around the house.
Well, you know what? That was actually my reason for leaving the Catholic Church as well. I was basically de facto excommunicated for mental illness. So, I mean, like, I was treated with absolute contempt by the old-fashioned Catholics that was in the same church as me. It's not something I'm going to go into, but, like, I found these people to be absolute total hypocrites and cruel and abnormally sadistic in their torment of vulnerable individuals. Like, and there was a very adversarial atmosphere at the chapels, and they're always fighting with each other and stuff. And if you are vulnerable there, like, you would just be eaten alive by a lot of wolves, and they would show absolutely no mercy. And the ironic thing was that their ideology was preaching the opposite of what their personalities were like. Like, I was basically banned from it, and I went through hell, a period of detox. Like, I don't know how to say, it's not detox from drugs, it's not detox from it's not that kind of detox. It's like it was a detox from all the religious, like, I was a religious fanatic, like, so I detoxed from religion basically, and I wrote a book while I was detoxing. Went through hell. I couldn't get out of bed for like 2 years, and I was definitely, when I was a religious fanatic, I was overtly delusional. Like, I was seeing signs from God everywhere, and I was just living in an alternate reality. But that alternate reality was, in my opinion, it was the result of extreme stress, because I was doing a lot of very extreme penances for a long time. It was the result of basically ideology that was Christianity, traditional Catholicism, and a lot of religious conspiracies and stuff that was basically given the structure to a whole new structure to my perceptions, to the extent that even if I was to go anywhere, I would see signs from God everywhere, and it would all be me seeing what I want to see, just to reinforce my belief system. And when I detoxed from religion, I was convinced that I was going to hell, and then eventually, I mean, I didn't turn into some the Christians always say that if you lose the faith, it's a void, the void is filled by some especially wicked sin, like something that's extremely wicked to replace the void of all of this Christianity that somehow filled you, you know. I mean, like, that didn't happen, like, you know what I mean? I mean, I don't pray anymore, but like, right. I don't go to church, but I don't go around doing wickedly immoral things, you know, according to Catholic definitions of morality and stuff. Like, I don't go around doing wickedly immoral things. I do good deeds wherever I can, you know, it depends on what you define as good and bad, like, but I'm not especially wicked. I have a lot of empathy for people, very open-minded. I listen to Gregorian chant, like chant in Latin from the 7th century, and basically understand it all. Like, and like you know what I mean? Like, I do appreciate that there's some wisdom in the scriptures, you know. My psychiatrist actually told me to read the Book of Wisdom. I think it's written by Jesus, the son of Sirach, or something like that, or Solomon or something. Actually Solomon, I think, but
Solomon, I think it was.
Yeah, Solomon, yeah. But I mean, like, see, like, I was going to try and make a point about psychiatry, but the stigma of mental illness, like, it was such a powerfully relevant thing for the traditional Catholics that I was associating with, that it just nullified all of my extreme religious devotion to nothing. And they were saying I was possessed by the devil and everything, like, and I was practically the most empathetic, the most humane, like the most I wasn't into all the chapel politics, like the petty factions and stuff that was at the chapel. Like, I was trying to be a saint, like, literally, and I was looking up the examples of the Catholic saints and all of their extreme penances and extreme religious habits and stuff, devotions and all their practices and stuff, like, and I was living as if I was trying to be a saint, and in like, I suppose in theologically speaking, like, it's supposed to be portrayed as a good thing if you're drunk with the love of Christ, but I suppose I became that way, and then I became basically overtly delusional. Like, I could see signs everywhere, like, I just and it wasn't like I was going around living under an ideologically tainted perception of reality, but that's how it happened to me. But we were trying to make a point about psychiatry there before this. Like, if, like, I mean, I've had symptoms, you know, like, but if a person was to be described as morally deficient, like, they have to be responsible. I mean, they have to be in possession of their own faculties and their own actions. Like, if they're under the, you know, like, if they're under if they're under the influence of some ideological zeal or some kind of hive mind or something, they're not fully responsible for what they're doing. But when it comes to psychiatry, there's a kind of like, it's as if, like, I don't know, like, how are you responsible if you're psychiatrically ill and stuff, like, I don't know, and the prospect of redemption as well. That's what I was trying to talk about. Prospect of redemption, like, you know, in theory, like, Christian communities are supposed to forgive people that's flawed or deficient or whatever. They're supposed to, like, they very rarely do, you know. But like, psychiatrically, like, I don't think psychiatry as a kind of an ideology has the concept of redemption in it. Like, you know, like, it's as if, like, once you manifest symptoms and enough to get diagnosed, you can never come back from that. Like, there's no forgiveness, and you know, like, 10 years later, 20 years later, what you done 20 years ago is still relevant, while everybody, including the person that done it, has moved on, probably completely different person, but it's still somehow relevant, you know, like it's still used to justify it justify having you in a classification that basically is permanent. Like it never, it's always relevant, even when it's not relevant. Like it's like, and then everything that a person could do, if it's perceived in a tainted way, reinforces the original diagnosis. Like it's like confirmation bias. It's like people see what they want to see, or everything justifies the original diagnosis. So even something that's completely innocent, or something that could be genuine, you have genuinely good motivations for doing something, or like genuinely not something that's pathological or something. It's tainted and it's interpreted in a way that reinforces the original diagnosis, and
Right.
you know what I mean. And the reason why all that is justified is because at some point in their life they had symptoms. So therefore, because they had symptoms once, and there's no redemption, everything they could possibly do is going to be within the context of those symptoms. So it's like, I don't know, it's like putting a mark on somebody that you can never wash off the mark. You know, like it's like,
Right.
I mean, I have arguments with I shouldn't say, because I've a lot of haters watching my channel, but I have arguments with people about this, and it's like a psychiatric diagnosis. I think it's a form of, like, you know, social leprosy. That's like, I know it's strong language to use, but back when leprosy used to be very commonplace, whoever had leprosy had to live ostracized from society, and they had to ring a bell whenever somebody approached them, so that when they hear the bell, people would stay away.
Right.
You know, like it's that's I really think I really do genuinely think that's what psychiatry is. It's social leprosy. Just my opinion. You know, but feel free to disagree if you want, but you know, it's just what I think. You know.
No, I understand what you're thinking. I couldn't have made it this far without the medication that I've been on, and I credit that to psychiatry. I don't necessarily agree with some of the ways that like it's here, you know, there's a clinic, and you go to the clinic to get your medication, and you go in a room, you see a man sitting there with a notebook, and he's, what's your name? Get your file. He looks at your file. He says, okay, you need this, 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 and this, and then that's it, and go on your merry way. And that's typical how it works here. And but my county is trying something different, where we go and see a doctor at a clinic, but then we have a caseworker come to our house once a week and just talk to us about how we're doing. You know, is the medication working? Is it not working? What things are you struggling with? What things are you dealing with? What things are you trying to deal with? You know, and I still have somebody come once a week, and it's like having a therapist come to your house, and you know, it's free of charge, and I take advantage of that. And like I said before, I was a teacher for nearly 20 years, and I have a master's degree in special education, and but there's no way I could go back to work at this point. I don't see me being able to deal with those kids, and I still need medication to keep my emotions down, so I don't go off on my kids. I don't go off on my wife. I got to think about them, and so that's how I view psychiatry. I don't know if it's necessarily the best thing, but it's all I've got here at this point. And then, the stigma part of it, I've got people in my own family that, have no clue what I'm talking about, and they don't want to know, and they don't care, and, you say you're bipolar, well, that's just an excuse to act how you want. And, it's like, no, it's not an excuse to act how I want. I would wish my worst enemy to suffer with a mental illness. And but I do think you're right, though, that there are things that are, in the DSM-5, the DSV-5 or whatever it is, that aren't necessarily mentally ill. And you're right to make the point about homosexuality. That was once considered a mental illness, and now they're finally scrubbing that from all the psychiatric literature. So I don't know who makes the changes, but somebody does, and I don't necessarily think I agree with a lot of the way psychiatry treats people, but here it's the only way we can get the medication we need to function. Or to get out of bed when you've been in bed for 2 years, like you were talking about. I know that feeling.
Can we have a break for 2 minutes?
Yeah.
I'll be back in 2 minutes, okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
So if I haven't edited this part out of the recording, I was just dying to use the bathroom there, so had to go different part of the flat to use the bathroom, but it's waiting for him to come back. I have to go somewhere as well, so might be a bit late, but fuck it anyway.
Sorry, I had to use the restroom. Let me let my dogs out real quick. Come on, guys. Everyone come back in? Stop. We're talking. Okay, man, I'm sorry. Breakfast time for the dogs.
No problem, dude. No problem. Yeah, well, okay.
Lost
But, hello, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm gonna have to go in about 10 or 15, or I mean, 20 minutes at most, like, because there's an appointment I have to go to, like, you know. But, yeah, well, what was I gonna say, like, what were we, is there anything that you want to say about, I don't know, like, what about society? Like, I mean, the idea that you could have somebody come into your house, it's kind of placing you in some kind of community with the mental health service, but I think a lot of people in society see it as some kind of stigma or some kind of shame that some people, the people that's diagnosed, don't really have much choice, either through it being forced on them or through lack of opportunities. They don't have much choice of who to associate with. So if somebody is diagnosed, they expect them to be in some kind of community with the mental health service. So I think, like, it's almost stigmatic that, like, I don't know, there's a kind of, I don't know, something that people think is prestigious is the ability to do what you want when you want, to have total, like, to have your will accepted at all times. But when people are under kind of supervision of their life, or some kind of administrators of their life, like, I think, I don't know, if people see it as some kind of stigmatic, like, you know, like, I don't know what to say about that, like, you know. I mean, I know it's a typical trademark insult, like, people have said to me lots of times, like, oh, you're not taking your tablets, stuff like this. Like, I'm not prescribed tablets, but, like, or you're not taking your tablets and stuff, you know, like, what else, like, yeah, stuff like this, like, and it's the idea of not being able to have your will accepted 100% of the time, you know, like, it's as if, like, there's always an authority that you have to consider, you know, like, it's the mental health service or your acceptability to society. I mean, you always have to consider this, even if you don't want to, even if it doesn't make sense to do it in that situation. It's always some kind, it's like a shadow or something. That's how I feel anyway, you know, like, I try to forget about the mental health service a lot of the time, you know, and I have had many animated arguments with them. They've no choice to, like, I think a lot of things that happen in psychiatric treatment is basically, like, like I suppose people are supposed to accept. I don't know. People are supposed to accept, like, how do I say it? Like accept the benevolence of the mental health service, you know. But and people that's being treated are supposed to accept that, like, you know. And then if you can't accept the mental health service, they're like, they say, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" You know, like, you can't accept pure benevolence. Like, you must be extra deficient. Then, you know, like, you must be extra flawed. Something pathologically wrong if you can't accept these people who are the personification of benevolence, you know. And of course, like, I'd be the kind of person who thinks that, like, every individual just has their own will, and nobody is 100% light. Like, we're all a mixture of light and darkness, you know. And to think that these people are just walking angels, and that these people are always the epitome of wisdom and everything, to think that that's true 100% of the time, like, I think that would be pathological to believe that. Like, it would be pathological if somebody was so naive that a certain person from a certain organization could just come to them and basically program their mind on every occasion without any resistance. That's I don't know, that's how I feel about it anyway. Like, I really think that independence like of an individual from some kind of authority that can program them, I really do think that independence is basically something that gives people dignity, and it's how people use that independence. Like, that's why I think that part of rehabilitating people has to be to give them back their independence, you know. And as well as, like, part of my politics as well, like, I advocate independence for my country. So if my country was a person, like, I'd be advocating dignity and independence for my country. But that's just on another topic. This is not I usually do political videos, but this is not a political video. But I mean, like, what was I gonna say? Like, I really think that if psychiatry was to fully heal people, it would then lose its relevance. Like, I mean, like, when the person is fully healed, that's they're not necessary anymore. I mean, it's not necessary to supervise somebody that's
right
doing everything right. Like, it's not necessary to supervise somebody that there's no point in supervising somebody if somebody does everything right. So, but it goes back to the whole premise of psychiatry, where, like, I suppose it's the lack of redemption. Like, you know, like, psychiatry is always necessary because even if a person is doing everything right, it's still somehow inherently it's almost accidental. It's not their doing, you know. It's like I don't know, like, it's as if they can never fully possess their own will or possess control of themselves if you know, they messed up once, so therefore, because they messed up once, everything that they could possibly do in the future is tainted. And psychiatric supervision is always going to be necessary because they messed up once. But I mean, there's a lot of people, like, a lot of people mess up and they don't get diagnosed. You know, they go to prison or I don't know, something like that. Like, they sabotage their own life in some way. Like, a lot of people mess up and they don't get diagnosed. It's a lot of it's the context, you know.
Well, I do think there's one piece of the puzzle we haven't really talked about yet, and that's the spiritual part of it. And I don't mean religion, I don't mean church or anything, but I think that people that are so-called mentally ill have a special spirit to them, that another person may not have, and it's like an ability to be empathetic towards other people. And I think sometimes bipolar is having to do with that spiritual part, where people become very sensitive to other people, and can sense conflict, or can sense this person is down, can sense all sorts of things about a person, but not be judgmental about it, but be empathetic, and use it to become empathetic and become compassionate, and to become all of these things that psychiatry doesn't address. And because a lot of people that I've talked to, they always say the same thing. They say, sometimes I feel like I can not necessarily read somebody's mind, but kind of understand exactly what they're going through, and exactly what's happening. I can see that. I've heard a lot of people say that, and I think sometimes I've had that happen myself, and I think that's a big part of not having a stigma. And so I don't know.
I know that people that would have symptoms, like very, very severe symptoms, and be in hospital and stuff for a long time, I've seen a lot of people like that, and I've basically seen humanity as it was in the Stone Age, psychologically and emotionally. Like that's what I've seen, that the exact same traits of humanity as it would have been in the Stone Age, or as it would have been in some kind of disaster situation where there was people scavenging for food and shelter and stuff. I've seen people in that kind of state of raw, just raw emotions, and some kind of reversion to our natural state, where aggression was not taboo at all, and even things like that happened in the Stone Age, where might be going into a bit of Celtic mythology here, but the supernatural qualities of the environment, of rocks, of plants, of animals, of the sun and stuff, and the Celts weren't the only ones. I suppose the Native American Indians, stuff like this, and actually the country of India has similar stuff. They still practice polytheism, and they still have kind of stuff like this. But I'm going off point now. But I've seen people in situations where they were so raw and basically primitive emotionally and intellectually, and in every way. They're basically the same as the Stone Age, but people would say that they're psychiatrically experiencing symptoms, extreme symptoms, if we lived back in the Stone Age, that stuff wouldn't be out of the ordinary at all. But what was it gonna say? What was hang on a second, I'm not to lose my train of thought there, but and thing is, I suppose you say that people that have been through like psychiatric symptoms have a kind of special spirit and stuff, like more empathetic and stuff. Like I have a huge amount of empathy for people, like absolutely, like hyper empathy. That's what I have, like, to a lot of people. But then there's a flip side to that. Like you can be hyper unempathetic to people if you kind of logically reason that in order to be empathetic to certain people, you have to be you have to be the opposite, and extremely the opposite to other people. But I try and stay universal in my application of empathy, you know. But like I know that's not practical. I know that would be deceiving myself if I had to give everybody empathy, because some people will just take advantage of it and destroy you, you know. But like what was I going to say? Like you say, people that have been through psychiatric experiences have a kind of special spirit. I think I see what you mean. Like the way I kind of understand what you're saying is like people have kind of a more tolerance for, you know, the depth of human behavior, you know, like the depth, the deepness of it, like, you know, the more like the things that are more in communion with basically the animal nature that we are, like the more in communion with like some kind of way of thinking and feeling and acting that's not entirely molded by our culture, not entirely molded by civilization, like something that's basically primarily sourced in basically our animal nature and in our biology, you know. You know, like just very, like, I suppose, humanity before civilization, you know, like just I like, I'm trying to say it in a way that kind of is relevant to what we're saying. But like if people that have psychiatric experiences, like they, first of all, they're not conforming to society, because they're basically acting out of I don't know, impulse or something. But whatever,
lack of impulse control.
Yeah, so where's the impulse coming from? It's coming from their you know, it's coming from their biology, because it's their like they are the vessel that's acting out these things, like it,
right,
you know, like it's like a lack of discipline, or it's a lack of civilization, or like lack of conformity to civilization, lack of regard for civilizational norms. I like in the Stone Age, it wouldn't be that, like wouldn't be abnormal at all. Like you would actually be abnormal in the Stone Age if you were excessively civilized. Like that, like the civilized ones would be the odd one out then if they were civilized in the Stone Age. But like psychiatric people having a special spirit or something, like there's more tolerance for the depth of human nature, first of all, from a lot of people. But there's also like I mean, some doesn't apply to everybody that has psychiatric experiences, but like a lot of people, but there's more there's a lack of superficiality, like, because they probably experience some like profound emotional experiences and stuff, so they're not so superficial, they're not so and conformity to culture, conformity to civilization, like modern civilization, almost requires a kind of default position of superficiality, of a lack of emotional depth. And modern civilization, basically, I think modern civilization actually pathologizes emotional depth. Like it's, I mean, even people that like are like the way people interact with each other, like the way relationships form, the way job interviews are carried out, like everything is on it's operating on the foundation that, like, you know, you be superficial with me and I be superficial with you, and like the only thing that we take pride in is our possessions, and the idea of having genuine connections with other human beings, like, is not even considered relevant. Like, you know, it's like we're not even in communion with our own nature, because like we have to be superficial. We have to treat like treat is probably the wrong word, but we have to regard like anything that's not superficial as in some way taboo or some way dangerous or something, like or flawed or deficient or expression of some kind of vice or something. Like it's as if the civilizational norm is like some kind of stoic disconnect from your passions and disconnect from your own nature, and just your entire personality has to be dominated by some kind of superficiality. Like it's
well, yeah, it's like when somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey man, how you doing? It's been a long time since I've seen you." You know, you're supposed to say, "Yeah, that's right," you know. Instead, if somebody asked me in that situation, I'd tell them straight up, "You don't want to hear what I'm going through because you couldn't handle it." Nobody's willing to take that risk, like what you're saying, and really try to understand exactly what you're going through, exactly what's happening with you at that particular moment.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But that's happened to me lots of times. Like I've seen people just look at me as if I'm some kind of laboratory animal. If I say anything that's deep or profound or have an emotional that's deeper than the norm of superficiality, like they just look at you as if you're a curiosity, you're bizarre, you're a laboratory animal, and they're somehow above humanity. Like they're somehow they judge you. They judge you from a position of like oh, how curious! Look at humanity in its natural state. Like look at a man that's has these emotions and stuff, like, and has a mind of his own and stuff. Like look at this curious specimen, like this thing that doesn't conform to society. This freak show, like you're just a laboratory animal. Like, and I know just by looking at them, they look at you, but they're analyzing you when they're looking at you as with a kind of dismissive disinterest and judgment and stuff. Like I mean, people can tell a lot by facial expressions, and you can tell a lot by like just body language and stuff. But like people know when somebody is looking at them in the same way that they look at like a hamster in a cage. And like say if the hamster is like doing something unusual, like that's the kind of look that they have. Like it's like the people that are doing that, like they're somehow above humanity. They're somehow immune to having depth or having some kind of genuine emotions, and like having some kind of escape from the superficiality, like escape from the superficial. Like there's actually a deeper level of experience that people can experience, a more profound like meaning to and purpose. Like people can actually define their own purpose. Like this is the thing about this is why humans should be free. It's just people can define their own purposes and stuff. But like it's like people that judge people that are diagnosed as if they're kind of inherently weird and just some curious specimen. Like as if they're representing the conformity to society, and there's something about people that do that, like where I don't want to go on too long, but like they're deceiving themselves if they think that they're immune to having a genuine experience or a deep experience or to even being diagnosed themselves. Like I've met people that was basically diagnosed with like serious illnesses, and they were like, let's say they have symptoms even to this day, but like some of these people were former psychiatric nurses and I know two people that's former psychiatric nurses who are now paranoid schizophrenics, and they act very strangely in all ways. And I know like other people like general nurses and stuff. Like I mean, like even the people that would analyze you and pathologize you, they're not immune. Like they're not immune at all.
Right.
And like, and this thing about conformity is a society. Conformity in society it almost requires like a constant, repeated effort to conform. Like it's as if like I don't know, internally walking on eggshells or just consciously trying to control yourself so that you're acceptable to the authorities. Like, but I mean, if people don't succeed in doing that, or they don't want to do it, like they fall out of society very fast, and then and society is so sensitive about the level of conformity that it requires from people. The slightest thing, I mean, the slightest failure to conform is it's spotted and it's expelled as if it's foreign entity. Like it's just expelled as if it's a waste product of society or something. Like it's just, I don't know, like it's like coughing up something when you get virus or something. Like it just right. that's what the body of society does. Like, and that's what happens when society has such a perfectionist definition of what's normal and what's acceptable. Like it's getting even more perfectionist all the time. Like it's just but that's basically that's what I think anyway. But I think it's very interesting to talk about these things. I find this very interesting, but like I kind of have to go somewhere as well at the same time, but is there anything that you want to say? Like,
I think we agree on quite a bit. I'm looking forward to more conversations.
Hey, well, I'll definitely do this again with you. It's only like it's 2:20 now, and I have to be somewhere at 3:00. So I kind of we do this again. I wasn't finished. Like, I know I have to finish because I have to go somewhere. But like, I feel like I want to say more things. You know what I mean? Like, so, yeah. And like, I want to hear more from you as well. It's like, because I think people have to. They don't have to. Like, it just like people should have like just see people that's stigmatized. Not really. Like, I suppose not manifesting anything that's particularly outrageous or anything. Like, just to see people as human beings, like.
Right. I mean, society in general would practice that. It would be a lot more. It's like the typical church thing. I mean, they tell you how bad you are, and that you need redemption, you need, a savior, and it's like, I think there's some truth to that, but you know what? When God created the world, according to the Bible, He said it was good, and He said when He created man, He said it was good, and if He could say it then. Can you imagine if we said that to each other? You're a good man, you're a good person. If more of society would take up that way of thinking, that way of being, it would be a completely different road than what we see now.
Yeah.
And that was like one of the reasons why I left the church. And there's an Irish theologian, well, Celtic, I guess, Pelagius, and he had a debate with St. Augustine about whether or not when you're born, are you born into sin, or are you born, into heaven? And if anybody can look at a baby and see what a marvelous thing it is, instead of, I'm not expressing myself the way I need to. If you see anything other than good in a little child, if you see a bad, sinful person that needs saving, there's something wrong with you, because you look at a baby and it's the most helpless creature and the most I know you need to get. I'm not making much sense right now.
Oh no, hang on a second. No, say what you're going to say, because I think this is going to be a brilliant point. Go keep going, man.
Just that little child is completely is completely at your bidding. You have to change his diaper, change the clothes, feed him, give him baths, do all these things, and the church is going to say that this kid is a sinner and needs to be baptized, and it's like, no, he's good. God looks, when he created humanity, he said it's good. It's good that man should not be alone. He created a woman, and if that's the way, if that was the lens in which we looked at everybody in society, we would have a completely different society than what we have now, because people wouldn't be judgmental. They wouldn't be putting stigmas on people for whatever, whether it's mental illness or something else, and I'll get into the Pelagius thing another time, but I gotta go back to bed, I think.
You know what? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I actually think that was an absolutely brilliant thing to say at the end. Like, the idea that somebody that's basically innocent, like, and has yet to accrue guilt, could have some kind of belief system or structure or cultural obligations imposed on them that are so unsympathetic to their actual nature, like so judgmental of their inherent state. Like, how can you judge like some baby, like, like it's just it makes total sense to me, like it's just it's like, and to impose some kind of system and judge them according to some system that's so unsympathetic to their nature. And like, it applies to psychiatry as well, where people that are, like, I've seen people that are just broken. Like, I went through a lot of bad things myself in my life, and there was some times where I was genuinely messed up, like, but to have some kind of system imposed on you that's so unsympathetic to your actual nature and to the expressions of your nature, like just a human being does what a human being does when they're suffering, or when they're under pressure, or when they're reacting to something in the environment or something. Like, to have something that's so unsympathetic to these natural expressions of humanity, I don't know, like doing something crazy, or just like, crazy, like stereotypical crazy, or doing something violent, or just I don't know, breaking up stuff, like breaking things or something, like, or just saying things that's inappropriate or something, like, or just, you know, like, having beliefs that are not, like, they don't represent the general consensus of whoever you're talking to, you know, just doing the outrageous, you know, like, things like that, like. But these are all expressions of, like, humanity in its natural state, you know, like, it's just natural humanity, just unstructured expression of humanity. Like, is humanity expressing itself that's not conforming to any kind of behavioral structure or behavioral or thought structure, or, you know, like, just a wild and free humanity, you know, like, and like, a lot of people that are, like, if people are broken, you know, like, if people are suffering, like, and stuff like this, they don't really have the willpower or the energy or the desire to conform to a society that's so oblivious to their suffering, like, so a society that's based on superficiality. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's based on superficiality and, like, keeping up appearances and stuff, you know, like it. And right. Then when, you know, like, they don't have the willpower to conform to something like this, when they're internally, you know, biologically experiencing things that make them want to express, just get it out of their system, like, just act wild, or just, like, say something that has to be said, and that, like, even whether it's true or not, like, it just, like, they just have to manifest some kind of, like, independence or some kind of will or something, like, you know, like, all this conformity and superficiality and stuff that civilization requires of us. It's almost as if it requires a kind of like, you don't, it's as if you can't have a will of your own, you know, like, you have to conform, you know, like, I don't, you know what I mean, but it's trying to, like, it's trying to disconnect all the people that conform from their own will, like, from their own nature. And, like, I just believe, like, I'm just gonna end on this, but, like, I'm kind of a Celtic kind of natural, I don't know, like, natural, I believe in a natural society, you know, like, whether or not you can make any kind of moral system that encompasses that state of, like, you know, wild humanity or something like that, but, like, I just believe in a natural society. Like, I believe just following the laws of biology, like a natural society. Like, I don't think that just spontaneity and emotions and stuff, I don't think these should be pathologized, or I don't think we should all live in a superficial society. I think we should live in a society where people just have, like, genuine connections with each other, and communities, and a kind of social fabric where, you know, like, it's not just your like, mental conformity to civilization. That's not the only part of the fabric. It's like, it would incorporate people's natural emotions, people's freedom of will, and all these things, but it would result in a kind of harmony. I think it would result in a harmonious society that was that basically, it wasn't just a superficial society, it was a deep society with a social fabric, and that's where Ireland was like for a long time. Like, these communities, like, all over the place, that, like, there was kind of a social fabric, and even the emotions that people would feel in a different part of town or wherever, like, would be somehow incorporated into the social fabric of the society. It's like, we're not all just independent operators, like, we're not all superficial, like, you know, what happens to other people actually does matter to the overall culture that we live under and stuff, you know. That's what Ireland used to be like, but now we're becoming very superficial these days, you know, and psychiatry is just promoting the superficiality, I suppose, you know. Like, I just believe in, like, a natural society, you know. So I think people should just, I don't know, like, just people have more just express their biological nature to the fullest, you know. I'm like, even people doing outrageous things, like I just see that as an expression of like the human animal, just
Right.
just, you know, like it's just that's what I think, like, you know.
Our reptilian nature.
Yeah, well, are we even reptiles? I don't know. Like, we're monkeys, if anything. Like, we're just monkeys, you know. Like, there was a funny thing. Like, well, I think I said it before the protest, but like, there was a protest in Dublin, again, outside of like, people were protesting against the censorship of people's freedom of speech that's going to be brought in the next few weeks, and there was basically another crowd of basically establishment-sponsored communists, and they were protesting against the protesters, and basically, well, just so you know, that's who a lot of my haters are. They're all these anti-fa types and stuff, you know. So, just I hope you don't get any hate your way, you know. But you know, like, what was I going to say? Like, I just see this as like basically two different tribes of monkeys just doing some kind of tribal war dance in front of each other, and just that's what I see it as, you know. Like, it's just I don't know, like, I mean, I don't, how do I, like, I don't know, like, I mean, I know I have to go somewhere and all that, but yeah. Like, it's just, I don't really see people acting in, if they think that they're acting in some kind of ideology or belief system or culture or something, I just see an animal. Like, I just see an animal just, I always just see an animal. That's what I see now. Like, I mean, in the past, I used to see religion versus the devil, and before that, I used to see like political categories and stuff. But I just see animals just doing what animals do. Like, I know I know people would say that I have political beliefs and philosophical beliefs and probably religious beliefs and stuff, but I just see animals just doing what animals do, you know. Just I mean, that's like, I mean, it might sound wrong, but I expect women to act in a certain way, and I expect men to act in a certain way, and I expect people that's young, that have more vitality and you know, vigor in like, because they're be more physically, have youth and stuff. I expect them to act in a certain way, and I don't expect them to act in conformity to any kind of belief system. I expect people that's like physically strong to be more courageous. I expect people that's taller to be more courageous as well. You know, I expect women to be more, you know, diplomatic and stuff, because like they're usually not as tall as men and stuff. I don't know. Like, I just see the animal always, you know.
Yeah.
That's, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't go to this appointment. But, But
I'm going to pick your brain sometime on the whole Celtic mythology thing. I'm very, very interested in that, and I've been reading a little bit about it. All of a sudden, you pop in my life. I think there's a reason for that. So I appreciate you.
Well, you know what? Thanks very much. Like, I actually think this was a very good interview. So I'm going to watch it later, and like, hey, we can do another interview, okay?
Yeah.
Like, you know, so hey, thanks for coming on. Yeah, I'll talk to you again, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Peace.
All right. Bye.
See you later. Bye.